Welcome, wanderer. I'm so glad you found your way here tonight. What you're about to hear isn't quite a story in the ordinary sense. It's more like an invitation to drift through forgotten places, to listen to the whispers of worlds that exist just beyond the edge of what we can see. Over the next hour, we'll journey together to 11 hidden corners of time and memory. Some are beneath the earth. Some exist only when darkness falls. Some live in the spaces between breath and silence. And all of them have been waiting, patient and unspoken, for someone like you to finally listen. So I ask you, find somewhere quiet. Let your shoulders soften. And as we walk together through these tales of lost libraries, hidden cities, and gates carved from moonlight, allow yourself to step just slightly out of time, because these stories don't rush, they breathe, and they want to be felt more than understood. Are you ready? Then come. The silence is listening too. The throne beneath the dust of dawn, in the breathless stillness before the world awakens, when night has not yet surrendered to morning, and the first threads of dawn lie hidden beneath the horizon. There is a quiet place where the earth seems to hold its own memory. It is here in this fragile seam between darkness and light that an old road stirs beneath the dust. Not visibly. No lines carved in stone, no path pressed into soil. But as a faint suggestion, like a thought the land has almost forgotten how to think. It is said that this road once shimmered like hammered gold beneath ancient suns. Some believe it glowed from the footsteps of kings and seekers who walked it with reverence. Others whisper that it reflected celestial light that flowed down from the heavens like a gentle river. But now, whatever brilliance it once carried has been swallowed by centuries of wind-blown earth. Only a soft ripple in the ground remains, a subtle rise and fall beneath scattered reeds and sleeping stones. And so, as listeners in the quiet moments before dawn, we follow that ripple. Slowly, as though afraid to disturb the silence, we step into the forgotten path, guided only by the question that drifts through the cool morning air. What memory lingers in the soil long after the footsteps vanish? The world seems to hold its breath. A pale mist stretches across the abandoned fields, rolling like a slow tide. The air tastes of dew and distant starlight. Somewhere, a bird stirs in its nest, but does not yet sing. The veil of night is thinning, revealing shapes that have waited patiently for centuries. As we drift deeper along the buried pathway, small fragments begin to rise from the earth like fragile truths returning to the surface. A broken milestone, half sunk into the ground, its edges smoothed by time. A flat stone etched with a symbol so faded it resembles more of a memory than a carving. The faint suggestion of parallel grooves, perhaps once carved by ceremonial wheels, or nothing more than the earth adjusting after long forgotten rains. Each piece glows softly in the weakening moonlight, wrapped in the hush of an old, patient world. And in these small fragments, a story begins to form. A kingdom that did not rise through conquest or wealth, but through devotion. A land shaped not by the force of armies, but by the quiet faith of its people. Whispers tell us that this kingdom's throne was unlike any other. It was not carved from dominance or ambition, but from humility. It stood at the meeting place between the mortal world and the realm of the unseen, a gate of sorts, through which the wisdom of the skies could descend gently upon human hearts. In its presence, even the proudest of rulers bowed their heads, not out of submission, but out of recognition that they were but a brief flicker in the long breathing life of the earth. The road we follow, this golden path now buried by centuries, once led directly to that throne. We continue onward, the dreamlike rhythm of our journey unfolding with the slow certainty of dawn's approach. The mist parts in long curling ribbons. Pale grasses stir as though whispering among themselves. Here and there we pass stones that feel arranged, though by whose hands or for what purpose we cannot say. They lean slightly toward one another, like elders in quiet conversation, remembering stories spoken long before our time. The deeper we walk, the more the air thickens with a faint warmth, like incense burned long ago, its scent still clinging to the memory of the wind. Legends begin to weave themselves around us. They speak of a monarch whose wisdom was so gentle it shaped the land itself. A sovereign who listened more than they spoke. Some say their presence caused rivers to run clearer, crops to grow in harmony with the seasons, and disputes to dissolve before they hardened into conflict. Of course, these are only stories, whispers carried from generation to generation, softening with every retelling. And yet, beneath the soil, beneath the shifting dust, something of that gentleness remains. Something that feels steady, warm, and patient. As dawn's earliest breath brushes the horizon, we come upon another fragment, a stone pillar, cracked and leaning, half embraced by creeping vines. At its peak rests a small carving, an open hand beneath a crescent moon. Scholars, in the days when scholars still searched these lands, called this the mark of harmony, a sigil once worn by those permitted to approach the throne. But now, the symbol resembles an eyelid half closed, as though the land itself is drifting towards sleep instead of waking. We pause here, letting the stillness gather around us. The air becomes very quiet, so quiet, in fact, that one might believe the world has paused its turning to listen. And in that delicate silence, something becomes clear. This road did not simply crumble through neglect. It chose to disappear. Generations of dust buried it. Seasons of wind softened it. Roots crept gently across it. And slowly, in the way that forgotten truths often do, it sank beneath the awareness of those who once trusted it. Some say the kingdom fell. Others say its people ascended. A few believe the throne itself withdrew from the world, returning to the heavenly realm it once touched. But beneath these possibilities lies another, quieter notion, one seldom spoken aloud. Perhaps the land wished to rest. Perhaps the throne's light was never meant to endure eternally in this world of shifting sands and fragile lives. We continue walking. The mist lifts further, revealing a shallow valley stretching into the distance. The landscape seems to hum with old memory. Just beyond the valley, shadows take the shape of ruins, barely visible, like figures half formed in a dream. There are hints of arches, low walls, and broken pillars. A place where ceremonies once echoed through bright mornings and starlit nights. We do not rush. This is not a road meant for haste. Instead, each step feels ceremonial, as though our presence itself is part of an ancient rite unfolding once more. In the valley's heart, we find a circle of stones arranged so precisely that even time's weathering hands could not erase their meaning. The stones face inward, shielding the center like guardians of a sleeping truth. And in that center, we see something faint, almost too faint to trust. A glimmer, Not bright, not sharp, more like the last breath of starlight before dawn. Is it a reflection, a trick of the early morning, or the lingering signature of the golden throne that once stood here? No answer rises. The earth remains silent. A soft breeze drifts through the valley, carrying with it an almost imperceptible warmth. It feels like a sigh, like gratitude, or perhaps like farewell. Some say the monarch's spirit still passes along this buried road at dawn, walking the path they once walked, ensuring their kingdom's wisdom remains gentle, even in absence. Others believe the throne left its essence in the soil, and that the earth is simply remembering its touch. As we stand at the threshold, where the unseen road meets the quiet horizon, we sense more than we see. A weightless presence, like a hand resting softly on the shoulder. A hum beneath the ground, low and resonant. A faint warmth in the air, as though dawn itself is offering a blessing. The throne is not visible. It does not rise from the valley. It does not glow or call or reveal. Yet its presence feels undeniable, hovering just beyond the veil of what the waking mind can grasp. Perhaps it was never meant to be seen. Perhaps it exists only in the space where memory softens into silence. Perhaps the throne was never an object at all, but a moment of harmony distilled into gold that the world once carried and then let go. The horizon brightens, the mist recedes, morning begins its gentle ascent, and still the truth remains unspoken, suspended like a lantern in twilight, glowing faintly in the breath between night and day. We turn away from the valley, leaving the buried road behind. The earth settles again, closing its quiet secrets as the world awakens. The last trace of starlight fades, but the ache stays, a quiet, tender ache for what the earth keeps hidden, and for what we can sense but never fully see. And as dawn finally breaks, spilling soft gold across the land, it becomes clear that some memories choose to reveal themselves only when the world is still half dreaming, and then return to silence once more. Where the caravan winds fell, silent, it is said that in the last quiet hours before moonrise, the desert remembers things that the world has chosen to forget. And on certain nights, when the sands breathe softly and the horizon glows with a silver hush, an ancient road stirs beneath the dunes, like a vein of light awakening under the earth. Tonight, we stand at the edge of that silence. Before us, an endless expanse stretches into the dim and trembling distance. The dunes rise and fall like sleeping waves, their crests catching the moon's shy reflection. At this hour, the desert does not merely lie still. It listens, as though waiting for footsteps it once knew, for voices that once trusted it, for a caravan whose story was carried not in the weight of its cargo, but in the breath of its prayers. The sand is cool beneath the imagined memory of ancient hooves. A faint trail, barely visible, barely real, winds into the horizon, shaped more by longing than by geography. It was once a sacred caravan road, lit by torches and guarded by the rhythm of drums. Pilgrims and merchants, mystics and wanderers, all walked this road toward a golden city whose name now dissolves if spoken aloud. Beneath the silence, something calls. A breeze moves through the stillness, brushing past the remnants of forgotten markers. Half-buried stones inscribed with star symbols, eroded by centuries of shifting dust. Their angles catch the light, like the edges of memory trying to surface. And though no human voice echoes here now, one might still sense the soft murmur of words carried across ages. Walk gently. The desert has a long memory. It is here in this silver-lit emptiness that our journey begins, where the caravan winds once danced, and where in one quiet night of trembling light, they fell silent forever. Some believe the road was a gift from the moon itself, laid down when the world was young and the heavens walked closer to the earth. Others whisper that it was built by a vanished kingdom, whose rulers mapped the stars not for navigation, but for communion. Whatever the truth, this narrow path once connected distant sanctuaries, places where incense rose like offerings to the sky, where water springs flickered with reflected starlight, and where oaths were made in the hush between breaths. As we follow the faint outline of the road, the night deepens around us, softening its edges until everything becomes a dream. The dunes lean inward, forming gentle slopes like the walls of an ancient amphitheater. The sky opens wider, turning into an ocean of drifting memory, its constellations shimmering like artifacts suspended in calm celestial currents. Whispers tell us that the final caravan traveled under such a sky. It carried no gold, no spices, no banners. Its weight was something quieter. Messages, hopes, rituals too delicate for daylight. The merchants spoke in low tones, their words carrying a gravity that sand could not swallow. Mystics walked among them, wrapped in veils embroidered with crescent moons. They were said to bear scrolls written in ink made from crushed gemstones, texts that glowed faintly whenever the moon reached its highest arc. What were these scrolls for? No one can say. Some claim they recorded conversations between the early kings and the stars. Others suggest they held descriptions of a throne room carved entirely from moonstone, a place of such silence that every breath became a prayer. As we drift deeper into the desert's embrace, the air grows warmer. The sand shifts beneath us, not in resistance, but in gentle guidance, as though we are walking across the body of a resting giant. The dunes, with their sweeping curves, seem to breathe, slow rise and fall, steady as the rhythm of a sleeping world. Ahead, one of the ancient markers stands taller than the others. Half of it is swallowed by the dune, the rest illuminated by the moon's tender glow. On its surface, faint carvings emerge, a spiral representing the path of wandering spirits, a crescent for protection, a constellation for remembrance, symbols that never ask to be understood, only acknowledged. The closer we draw, the clearer the air becomes, as if the desert is parting a veil. It is here that the stories begin to stir. Travelers once spoke of seeing silver lights in the sky during the caravan's final night, lights that pulsed softly, neither star nor flame. Some described them as hovering lanterns that moved with the wind. Others insisted they were celestial messengers, descending in quiet procession to lead the caravan elsewhere. Yet the desert, vast and ancient as it is, keeps no record of what happened. The sand swallowed the road, the markers, the footprints. All that remains are stories, drifting like wandering seeds through the warm wind. And so we continue, carried not by certainty but by wonder. The moon climbs higher, casting elongated shadows across the curves of the dunes. From this vantage, the desert resembles a great stone tapestry, woven by time, by silence, by the dreams of those who once trusted this land to guide them. Somewhere in this vastness lies the memory of the golden city. It is said its walls shone like dawn, its spires catching the first morning light as though they were fashioned from captured sunbeams. Its central hall, carved from a single slab of moonstone, was the destination of the final caravan. Not to deliver offerings, but to await an omen. Yet no ruin marks its presence now. No shards, no collapsed columns, no scattered tiles. As if the city did not fall, it simply dissolved. Some say the sands took it in one sweep of wind. Others believe it ascended into the sky. And some, in whispers barely carried beyond firelight, claim the city still stands in another realm, waiting for those who remember its name. The night deepens further. Stars slide across the sky like drifting embers. Every sound grows softer. Our footsteps, the brushing wind, the stirring sand, all merging into a single gentle breath. It is in this tender quiet that we approach the place where the final caravan was last seen. The dunes curve inward ahead, forming a natural hollow, an amphitheater sculpted not by hands, but by the slow and patient artistry of time. The sand here lies smoother than anywhere else, as though untouched since the night the caravan vanished. The air becomes warmer still, infused with a sweetness similar to incense or distant rain. Some believe this hollow is where the veil between worlds grows thin. Others say it is merely a resting place, shaped by winds that understand the weight of forgotten stories. Yet all agree that something sacred lingers here, something not quite visible but gently felt. We pause at the center of the hollow. The silence is profound, not empty but complete, a silence that feels alive. In this stillness, it is said, the last caravan circled its camels, set down its lanterns, and lowered its scrolls beside the soft flame of a single torch. Above them, the sky shimmered with the trembling silver lights, descending, ascending, dancing like breath caught between worlds. No one knows what they saw. No one knows where they went. They did not leave footprints. They did not leave ashes. Only the desert's memory holds them now, wrapped in quiet devotion. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. A warm breeze rises, brushing past us like a final farewell, gentle, reverent, familiar. It carries the faint scent of something ancient. Old parchment, extinguished torches, moonlit stone. Then it fades into the night. Perhaps the sacred roads never vanish. Perhaps they linger in the spaces between memory and dream, waiting for someone who walks gently enough to notice their shimmer beneath the shifting sand. The dunes exhale once more. The moon drifts behind a veil of soft cloud, and the hollow grows still. Somewhere in this silence lies the echo of the final caravan. Not lost, just listening, watching, waiting for the moment when someone once again remembers how to hear the winds that fell silent and how to follow them across the sleeping waves of the desert, toward the hidden places where devotion endures. And as the night deepens, slow, soft, serene, we let the questions settle into the warm air around us, untouched by answers, unbroken by time. Do sacred roads truly vanish? Or do they simply wait for someone who remembers how to listen? The gate carved from wind and time. It begins with a silence so deep it almost feels ancient. High above a forgotten valley, where the earth folds into shadow and the sky bends as though listening, there rests a lonely cliff of pale time-softened stone. And upon that cliff, half hidden by dust and the slow breath of the evening wind, stands an archway so fragile it seems more whispered than built. A curve of rock eroded into delicacy, as though formed not by tools, but by centuries of wind passing gently through a world that once remembered. It is said that long ago travelers would come here at dusk, when the light sank low and gold, to pause before this threshold carved from wind and time. They would stand where you now stand, letting their breath fall quiet, waiting for the hush to settle into their bones. For to pass beneath this archway was not merely to enter another place. It was to cross from one state of being into another. It was a ritual of stillness, a rite of listening. Whispers tell us that beyond this gate once shone the path to the golden throne. That ancient seat not of kingship but of harmony. Its blessing was never a crown, never dominion, never authority. Instead, it was said to be the gentle radiant balance that dwells between all things. The joining of wind and sky, of stone and breath, of wanderer and world. Perhaps that is why the road leading toward it demanded nothing but quietness. Perhaps that is why the gate remains, even now, though the city it once led to has drifted into myth, like smoke carried by a distant breeze. If you stand very still, you may feel it. The faint hum beneath the stone. The memory of footsteps taken with reverence. The soft, ash-like traces of ceremonies held in the shadow of stars. For this was once the threshold of a civilization whose heart beat in rhythm with the sky. Long before the valley was abandoned, there existed a people who built their lives around the movement of light. Their temples were not fortresses, nor were their halls carved with the bold markings of conquest. Instead, they raised sanctuaries that shimmered in the sun like illusions. Structures made of sandstone and polished clay that caught the wind and turned it into music. Their pillars were not carved with beasts or battles, but with symbols of breath, of drifting clouds, of spirals that echoed the turning of seasons. Some believe these people came from a land now swallowed by dunes. Others say they emerged from the mountains after a long era of wandering. But beneath all variations of their story lies a single steady thread. They were seekers, pilgrims of quietness, guardians of the unseen harmony that we so often forget in the haste of living. It is said that their architects studied the wind as much as they studied stone. They shaped their dwellings so the air could glide softly through them, carrying away heat, dust, and burdens of the spirit. At dawn, their cities glowed pale and soft. At dusk, they burned with amber light, their shadows stretching long across the valley floor like gentle invitations to reflection. Their scholars wrote not in long, rigid lines, but in drifting curves that invited the eye to wander. Their rituals involved the simple act of standing beneath open sky, letting silence press gently against the heart, until understanding rose like a moon from within. And at the edge of their sacred valley, this gate, this fragile, breath-worn archway, marked the beginning of the journey toward their most revered sanctuary, the place where the golden throne stood. Not a throne to be sat upon, not a symbol of authority. Instead, it was described as a radiant seat of alignment, a point where earth and sky met in perfect balance. To stand in its presence, they believed, allowed a person to hear the world as it truly was, not in words, but in resonance. Today, the road has crumbled. The path that once wound through the valley is now a softened scar on the earth, half claimed by brush and shadow. The sanctuaries have fallen into gentle ruin, their stones sinking into the soil like tired travelers lying down to rest. Only fragments remain, a column etched with spirals, a basin worn smooth by years of ritual cleansing, a stairway that rises to nowhere. But the gate remains, even after centuries of neglect. After storms have screamed across the cliffside and dust has buried its foundation, this thin ribbon of stone endures, delicate, improbable, shimmering in the dusk like a memory too stubborn to fade. When you draw near, you may notice the faint engravings on its inner curve. They resemble drifting clouds, or perhaps falling leaves caught forever in descent. Some say these designs represent the traveler's breath, the first offering made by anyone who sought to walk the pilgrimage path. Others believe the carvings echo the constellations once used to guide journeys during the long season of winds. Whatever their meaning, they soften the stone, giving the archway an almost living gentleness. As your hand hovers near the surface, you might imagine how many palms have brushed the same line before you, seeking reassurance, seeking blessing, seeking the quiet needed to step beyond. For the people of this valley believe that every journey was twofold, outward and inward, visible and unseen. To walk any path was to reveal something about the world and something about the self. The golden throne waited not at the end of the road, but at the end of one's illusions. Perhaps that is why their pilgrimage was slow, deliberate, shaped like the rising of a moon rather than the rush of a river. Those who traveled this way understood that awakening could not be grasped or seized. It arrived like a breeze, felt more than witnessed, delicate as a whisper carried across mountains. As the evening deepens around the gate, the valley below begins to darken, its contours softening until they resemble a vast sleeping giant. The sky cools into shades of faded copper and dusk blue. A single star emerges above the arch, trembling against the remaining glow of day. You stand in a place where countless seekers once paused, not to conquer their destination, but to prepare for the journey inward. Even now, the air holds a quiet expectancy. You may almost hear the rustle of ancient robes, the faint murmur of prayers spoken in forgotten dialects, the low hum of wind weaving through ceremonial flutes. There is an ache here, but it is a gentle one. The ache of memory, of longing, of unanswered questions that do not demand resolution. This place asks nothing of you. It does not require belief, nor understanding, nor certainty. It invites only presence. If you listen closely, you may hear the soft shuffle of time, as though the valley itself is breathing. The wind moves through the arch with a sound like distant chanting. Shadows stretch long across the threshold, blurring the line between past and present. Some say that the golden throne still exists, hidden somewhere beyond the valley's veil. Others believe it vanished when the last pilgrim laid down their burdens and walked into the sky. But most agree on one truth. The throne was never meant to be sat upon. It was meant to be approached, slowly, reverently, without expectation. For the people of this land understood that the sacred is not a destination. It is the quiet that grows within us as we move toward what we seek. Now, as dusk gives way to night, the archway stands neither open nor closed. It simply exists, like a breath held in the soft pause between heartbeats. The first night winds drift through, stirring the dust around your feet. Stars gather above the valley, forming faint, wandering constellations that once guided pilgrims on their long, slow ascent. A pale glow lingers on the gate's inner curve, as though a memory of sunlight refuses to depart. You may feel a tug, not urging you forward, not pulling you back, but simply offering the suggestion that some thresholds are meant to be witnessed rather than crossed. Some gates are built not to open, but to awaken. It is said that the spirit of this place still listens, waiting for footsteps that move with quiet hearts. But perhaps it listens not for arrival, but for the softness of intention. Perhaps it waits for travelers who understand that the path is measured not in distance or achievement, but in the silence they cultivate along the way. The valley breathes, the sky settles, and the gate, carved from wind and time, stands as it always has. Fragile, eternal, a gentle reminder that some mysteries do not unfold in words. They unfold in stillness. As you stand before it, wrapped in the hush of encroaching night, you may feel yourself drifting into that same stillness, into that soft, sacred pause where memory fades and wonder begins. The ancient threshold offers no answers, only an invitation, subtle as a sigh. Walk not with haste, walk with quiet, and listen. For some voices only echo when we are ready to hear them. The river that refused to forget it begins with a shimmer. Not a bright one, not the kind that commands the eyes, but a soft, moon-drenched quiver along the water's edge. The quiet pulse of a river that has moved through centuries without ever forgetting the footsteps that once trailed its banks. It is said that on nights like this, when the air holds its breath, and even the stars seem reluctant to disturb the stillness, the river loosens its memories, letting them drift upward like pale mist. Here, beneath a sky brushed with faint silver clouds, the waters move slowly, as though they are carrying not just silt and reeds, but the weight of all who once trusted them with their stories. Some believe the river hesitates deliberately, aware that each curve, each darkened pool, is a chamber filled with echoes. Others say it simply moves the way old things move, carefully, ceremonially, with the grace of something that has seen empires rise and crumble like soft clay. In ancient times, a ceremonial road followed this river for nearly a day's journey. A road not built for the hurried or the indifferent, but for processions that advanced like living rituals. Slow, rhythmic, deliberate. Stone lanterns once lined the path, each carved with a different celestial symbol. The crescent eye of the skyhawk, the four-pointed star of renewal, the spiral that marked the turning of ages. Now, many of those lanterns sleep beneath the current, their inscriptions stroked smooth by centuries of drifting sand. Only the tops of a few remain visible, rising from the river like tired guardians who refuse to abandon their posts. It is whispered that this road led directly to the golden throne itself. Not a throne of opulence, but a seat of judgment carved from dawn-colored stone. Here, kings ascended not to rule, but to be reminded. A ruler, it was believed, must look into the water and confront the truth of his reign reflected back at him. Some returned from the river humbled, some returned changed, and some never returned at all. For the river was said to remember everything. Joyous festivals where thousands carried blossoms of saffron and pale blue petals. Nighttime vows whispered beneath torchlight, the flames trembling as if leaning closer to listen. and the long solemn journeys of exiled kings who walked the ceremonial road alone. Their crowns left behind, their footsteps light with remorse. It is said the river followed them with soundless compassion, gathering their regrets gently, the way a mother gathers the fears of a child. Tonight, its surface gleams like brushed metal, and the moon draws a thin silver road upon it, a second path layered over the first. In that glow, the river becomes a quiet storyteller, one that prefers suggestion over certainty, whispers over declarations. Some scholars, those who spent their lives tracing faint inscriptions on river stones or listening to the murmur of reeds, believed the river once possessed a guardian spirit. Not a deity in the traditional sense, but something quieter, something woven from breath and mist. A keeper of truth, a witness. They claimed that every person who walked the ceremonial road left behind a fragment of their essence. A thought unspoken, a sorrow unvoiced, a hope too fragile to share aloud. And that the river in its strange gentleness gathered them all. The old texts speak too of a luminous barge, a vessel of pale gold that appeared only on nights of celestial alignment, when the planets formed their rare, perfect bow across the sky. Those who claimed to have seen it described it not as a ship of wood or reed, but as something woven from light itself, a floating shimmer, shaped not by hands, but by intention. It was said to glide without disturbing the water, its reflection as steady and bright as a still-burning star. No one agreed on where that barge led. Some believed it ferried the worthy into hidden realms beneath the water, lands where forgotten dynasties continued in silence. Others thought it carried seekers into dreams they were not yet ready to encounter. And a quiet few, the ones who studied the river most closely, insisted it carried no passengers at all, but served only as a reminder that the river was alive, and that memory is its own kind of journey. As we drift deeper into its story, the scenery around us begins to soften, as though the world itself is exhaling. Reeds bow in the silver current, their movements slow and ceremonial. The air smells faintly of wet clay and memory. Ruins shimmer beneath the surface, not fully visible, not fully lost. A broken archway here, a crumbled pillar there, each softened by time until they resembled dreams someone tried to remember too late. Smooth stones lie scattered along the riverbed, carved with symbols no one can fully translate. Half circles that might once have been moons, interlocking lines that could be maps or prayers, and spirals, always spirals, turning inward like thoughts descending into silence. Every now and then, the current brushes against one of these stones, and for a moment, the water glows faintly, as though remembering a story so ancient, it can only be told in light. Whispers tell us that these stones marked places of communion, spots where travelers paused, pressed their palms against the warm surface, and breathed a single confession into the waiting air. If this is true, then the river holds not just memory, but forgiveness, and perhaps, in its patient way, it has been carrying those confessions for centuries, storing them like seeds waiting to bloom again. The night deepens. A faint breeze stirs the reeds, though the trees stand still. Somewhere along the distant bank, an owl offers a soft, questioning call. Its voice drifts over the water and dissolves into the mist, as though the river absorbs even sound. We move with the current now, not resisting, not directing, simply drifting like an old thought rising into consciousness. The scenery becomes dreamlike. Shadows fold gently over one another. Light glides between branches in long silver threads. The water darkens, not with danger, but with depth. The kind of depth that welcomes silence. Here, see, the river bends around a cluster of pale reeds that sway as if responding to an unseen rhythm. The moon reflects between their thin stems, creating tiny corridors of light that flicker like candlelit halls. Some say the reeds remember the footsteps of priestesses who once walked here at midnight, their lanterns swinging in quiet arcs, their voices humming songs no instrument has ever echoed. A sense of serene melancholy settles into the air, the kind that is neither sadness nor longing, but something gentler, like the moment before a sigh. It feels as though the river itself mourns, not loudly, not painfully, but with the soft ache of an age slipping out of remembrance. Perhaps it grieves the fading of the ceremonial road. Perhaps it mourns the lanterns half buried in silt. Or perhaps it simply feels the absence of all those who once sought its reflection to understand themselves. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. And tonight, the river speaks in a language older than words. A language of ripples, of moonlight resting on moving water, of memory carried without resistance. Ahead, the river narrows. Mist rises in delicate tendrils, curling around the banks as though shaping unseen gateways. The world beyond grows faint, blurred at the edges like a half-remembered dream. If you look closely, you might sense the ghost of the ancient road beneath your feet. Its stones now part of the river's bed, their purpose dissolved but not lost. Somewhere beneath the surface, lanterns still stand, their soft golden glow extinguished but not forgotten. The river continues, unhurried as always, carrying its secrets deeper into the night. Perhaps they were never meant to be revealed. Perhaps they wait for a listener who walks slowly enough, quietly enough, to hear the stories woven into the water's flowing breath. But for now, the river keeps them, gentle, patient, unwilling to release them fully. And as its soft murmuring blends with the night, we feel the tide of its memory brushing against our own, inviting us into its long, unending silence. A silence shaped not by absence, but by reverence. And somewhere in that silence, in the hush between one ripple and the next, the river whispers once more, just softly enough for dreaming ears. Nothing precious is ever truly lost. The pilgrim who walked without footprints, it begins, as so many forgotten stories do, with a name whispered in the shadowed corners of old chronicles. A name not spoken loudly, but breathed like incense curling toward a temple's dark rafters. The pilgrim who walked without footprints. It is said their path could not be traced, even in the softest sand. Whispers tell us that where every traveler pressed their weight into the world, this wanderer moved as though carried by wind. Some believed they were a guardian born of ancient vows. Others imagined a prophet whose steps were too sacred to touch the ground. And a few, those who listened more to silence than to speech, claimed the pilgrim was never entirely human, but rather a gentle presence shaped from the road itself. Tonight, as the world quiets and the horizon folds into darkness, we follow them, not through maps or stones or measured miles, but through the softened glow of memory, through the hush of stories that ripple through time like moonlight on still water. Imagine now a road winding across a lone valley at twilight, dust rising in thin, drowsy spirals, and the sky brushed with the last gold of a disappearing sun. At the road's far end stands a gateway of crumbling sandstone, its arch shaped like a half-remembered prayer. This is where the chronicles say the pilgrim's journey began, and where we, in this candlelit hour, step into the unmarked world beside them. Somewhere deep within the folds of old scrolls, a fragile line of ink speaks of a kingdom in its final twilight, the realm of the Golden Throne, a place where kings once ruled not by sword or seal, but by the brightness of their spirit. Its halls were said to shimmer, not with metal, but with the shared dreams of its people. And yet, as dusk gathers around us, the throne lies dim, half lost to time, its once radiant chambers sinking into quiet dust. It was toward this fading wonder that the pilgrim walked, but no one could agree on who they were. A wandering guardian of sacred roads, a seeker yearning for release, a spirit drifting between worlds, carrying burdens older than stone. The chronicles disagree, but they all speak of the same miracle. The pilgrim left no trace behind. Even the soft paths of river mud held no mark of their passing. Even newly fallen snow showed only untouched whiteness where their figure drifted by. Some said they traveled with such profound peace that the earth simply chose not to remember their weight. Others thought their purpose was so gentle, so inward, that the world refused to interrupt them with the evidence of steps. And a rare few murmured that the pilgrim's journey was not meant to be seen at all, that it was a path walked between breaths, between moments, between what is known and what waits in dream shadow. We walk with them tonight, quietly, letting the hush of their legend soften our own breath. It is said that the first stretch of their pilgrimage was through a forest so still that even the trees slept lightly. Here, dew clung to every leaf like tiny lanterns, trembling with a soft internal glow. The pilgrim's presence was not seen but felt, an airy disturbance in the dimness, like a thought drifting through consciousness. Travelers who later entered that forest spoke of strange impressions, a warmth hanging in the air where the chill should have lingered, a rustle where no creature moved, the faint chime of unseen bells ringing from no clear direction. Perhaps it was the pilgrim's gentle reverence that awakened these sounds. Perhaps the earth itself wanted to honor a traveler who asked for nothing in return. As we drift between the silvered trunks, imagine the trees leaning ever so slightly, as though trying to glimpse the wanderer who walked with such tender quiet. The path glows faintly beneath us, though no moon yet crowns the sky. Beyond the forest, the pilgrim approached the line of abandoned way stations once used by merchants, monks, and wandering storytellers. Each stood as a tired skeleton of what they had been. Timbers softened by time and clay roofs, sagging under the gentle burden of years. And yet, those who later visited them swore that certain rooms felt warm, as though someone had just breathed within, as though a lantern had only moments before been extinguished, leaving the faintest whisper of heat in the darkness. Some say, begins one fragile manuscript, that the pilgrim did not rest in these places. Rather, the memory of rest followed them like a shadow. Others recount tales of shepherds who found their fires mysteriously rekindled, embers glowing with renewed life, a gift, they believed, from the unseen traveler passing silently through. Perhaps the pilgrim's path was not meant to mark the earth, but to soften it, to leave behind no scar, no weight, only only a sense of case so light it vanished upon touch. It was on the fourth night of the pilgrim's journey, the chronicles tell us, that the first visions began. A veiled temple appeared at the edge of the horizon, its pillars rising like ribs from a long sleeping beast. Moonlit altars shimmered with faint spirals carved deep into their stone. And at the very heart of the temple, an archway led into darkness so absolute it seemed to swallow even the idea of sound. Some believed these visions were memories of the world before the golden throne began to fade. Others whispered that they were glimpses of the kingdom's spirit, struggling to remain seen as time dissolved its brightness. But the pilgrim did not linger. They simply drifted past, untouched by the illusions, or perhaps guided by them in ways no mortal could understand. We, walking beside them in story, feel these visions press softly against us, like the weightless brush of wind on dreaming skin. As the pilgrim neared the lands surrounding the golden throne, the nights grew long and the skies deepened into a vast ocean of dark silver. It was beneath this moon, pale and patient, that the pilgrim paused at a circle of ancient stones. Each one bore the mark of a star, etched so long ago that the grooves seemed made by starlight itself. Here, legend says, the pilgrim finally bowed their head. Not in worship, not in fear, but in recognition. For the star markings matched the invisible constellations believed to guide seekers along the path of release. A road not meant to bring one to a destination, but to carry them deeper into their own unfolding. Some chroniclers imagined the pilgrim whispering to the stones. Others thought the stones whispered back. All we know is that the pilgrim lingered here longer than anywhere else on their journey. For even those who leave no footprints still pause where truth begins to surface. When at last the pilgrim approached the golden throne, the kingdom's final twilight was already falling. Sunlight no longer gleamed across the palace the way it once had. Its great pillars, once polished by countless hands, now stood mottled and dim. Vines wove patient spiral swords across cracked marble, and the great hall where songs once rose like dawn itself lay filled only with the quiet sigh of drifting dust. Yet even in this fading, there remained a stillness that felt sacred, an echo of the kingdom's ancient breath. Some chronicles speak of the pilgrims stepping inside. Others claim they stood at the threshold, listening. A few daring storytellers whispered that the pilgrim sat upon the throne itself, not to rule, but to rest, to dissolve, to let go. But no account agrees. Perhaps the truth was never meant to be recorded. Perhaps some moments only reveal themselves in silence. What is known, however, is this. When dawn came, the throne room was empty, and the pilgrim, who had walked so far without marking the world, was gone. No footprints led away. No trace of presence lingered. Only a faint golden warmth drifted through the hall, like the last breath of a dream. It is said that some seekers returned transformed. Others, more softly, simply dissolve into the path they follow. Perhaps the pilgrim became part of the road, part of the wind, part of the unremembered spaces between moments. Perhaps they found the answer they sought, or perhaps the act of seeking itself was the answer. We do not know. We are not meant to, for some stories do not close. They settle gently around us, like dust illuminated by the last light of day. As we step back from the golden throne, the question left hanging in the night is one the pilgrim may have carried in their silent heart. Is it the traveler who finds the road, or the road that finds the traveler? Let this question drift with you now, soft and unhurried, as sleep begins to fold its veil across your thoughts. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen, and some footsteps, the most important ones, are never meant to be seen at all. The city that sank into its own shadow. It begins in the quiet hour when twilight loosens its final strands of gold, letting them fall gently across an abandoned plateau. Here, on this wide breadth of ancient earth, the day ends not with a blaze, but with a whisper. Sands cool, winds soften, the sky deepens toward a muted violet, as if the heavens themselves have lowered their voice. It is said that in this place, beneath layers of dust and silence, lies a city that once glimmered with the radiance of a throne cast in gold. Not a throne of kingship alone, but of something older, something woven from starlight, reverence, and celestial breath. Some believe the throne did not merely reflect light, it breathed it, pulsing gently like a living heart at the center of a world now forgotten. But the city is gone. Gone, though not drowned by ocean or buried beneath shifting dunes. Whispers tell us it sank into its own shadow, as though the brilliance that sustained it withdrew like a tide, and the stones, obedient and sorrowful, followed the vanishing glow into the dim. And now, as the sun dips lower, twilight reveals its outline once more, soft as memory, fragile as smoke. If one listens carefully, the plateau seems to exhale. A cool breeze drifts across its surface, carrying faint scents of old incense, notes of cedar, myrrh, and an herb whose name is lost to time. These scents rise from cracks where earth has split, hinting at chambers below. In forgotten corners of the world, there are gates that have not opened in millennia, yet still wait. This is one of them. At the far edge of the plateau stands an archway, half swallowed by shadow. Its pillars are carved from sandstone the color of faded honey, etched with spiraling motifs that resemble constellations long erased from the night sky. The lower curves of the gate dissolve into darkness, as if the shadow below is not merely absence of light, but an entrance of its own. A doorway into the city that slipped away. Some say that at this hour, when daylight holds its breath before surrendering to night, the stones hum softly. Not a sound to the ear, but a vibration felt along the ribs. A pulse, faint and patient. Perhaps yearning, perhaps remembering. It is here our descent begins. Step gently now. Let the world above fade, like a lantern dimming behind us. The path down into the earth reveals itself by degrees. A scattered line of buried road rises intermittently from the soil. Smooth slabs once polished by generations of footsteps, now cracked, leaning, and dusted with a thin film of twilight's ashes. It is said these roads glow faintly at sunlit, not with fire, but with memory, as if they have never forgotten the rhythm of the starlight that once guided the city's people. To walk upon them in this hour is to feel a distant alignment, a soft echo of celestial harmony beneath the soles of your feet. Around us, half-ruined walls take shape in the dim. Murals stretch across these surfaces, though time has ghosted their colors and blurred their meanings. One can still trace outlines of figures gazing upward towards spirals of stars, of hands extended in gestures of offering, of a great throne bathed in rays descending from a sky unknown to us now. Perhaps they worship the heavens not as distant gods, but as companions. Perhaps the constellations were teachers, their cycles a sacred text. Some believe the city's architects built their towers not to reach the sky, but to mirror it, creating on Earth a map of the firmament above. And yet, something happened. Not a destruction with noise and flame, but a quiet recession, a dimming, like the long sigh of a candle that chooses to extinguish itself. Here, the air grows heavier, infused with the fragrance of forgotten rituals. There is a stillness that feels almost aware, as though the city remains listening. We move through a plaza that feels less like a place and more like a memory, lingering in stone. Rounded pillars lean together like elders murmuring secrets. A basin in the center holds dust, but still reflects the faintest glimmer of the sky, as if water once lived there. Sacred, starlit, and touched by the throne's light. Beneath the silence, stories stir. Deeper still, the twilight thickens until it becomes a kind of gentle dusk that clings to walls and arches. Here, the ruins seem to lean inward, forming corridors that guide us toward the city's hidden heart. Somewhere in these depths, at the center of this labyrinth of shadow, the golden throne once stood. Not seen, not reached, only implied, like a name spoken half in dreams. Those who studied its legends describe it not as a seat of power, but as a radiant fulcrum, a point around which the city's breath and purpose turned. It was said to gather starlight the way an ancient bowl gathers rain, releasing its glow slowly into the streets at dawn and dusk. Imagine a city where night never meant darkness, where houses were brushed by celestial light and gardens glimmered softly as if dusted with the residue of constellations, where the people lived in harmony with rhythms both earthly and divine, moving through seasons as though dancing through a cosmic ceremony. But light, some say, has its own will, and when the throne's radiance began to fade, whether from neglect, sorrow, or celestial alignment lost, the city felt its heart weaken. The shadows lengthened. Streets once illuminated grew dim, not from absence of brightness, but from a gathering stillness. Walls softened into silhouettes. Edges of buildings rippled as though dissolving. And then, slowly, quietly, the city sank into its own shade. Not downwards, but inward, retreating into an invisible echo of itself, like a memory returning to the mind that conceived it. What we walk through now is both presence and absence, the outline of a world that chose to sleep. Even the air takes on a velvety quality, hushed and expectant. Dust motes float as though suspended in thought, a distant hum, perhaps the remnants of celestial resonance, shivers along the stones. You may feel as if the city is breathing beneath your feet, as if it senses your presence, not with fear, but with recognition. Beyond the inner plaza lie remnants of observatories, circular platforms crowned with collapsed rings of stone. Each once housed devices aligned with star paths, moon cycles, and the subtle shifts of the heavens. Legends whisper that the city's scholars could read the sky with extraordinary precision, not as astrologers alone, but as harmonic observers, attuned to the pulse of the cosmos. They saw themselves not as separated from the universe's breath, but as participants in its ever-turning wheel. Some claim that when the throne dimmed, the stars above faltered too, as if the link between heaven and earth unraveled on both sides. Others believe the people foresaw the dimming long before it came, and accepted it like the end of a sacred season. Whatever the truth, their observatories now lean into the dark, open to a sky that still remembers them. Cracks in the stone trace constellations once honored. Faded inscriptions speak of cycles, echoes, and the silence between celestial beats. Walking here feels like moving through the pages of a forgotten hymn. At the farthest edge of the shadowed city stands a chamber whose entrance is shaped like a rising moon. Its lintel is carved with spirals, symbol of breath, of time unfolding, of journeys returning to their beginning. Inside, the darkness deepens into a calm, velvet quiet. Here, the scent of incense is strongest, as if this chamber held the final rituals before the city surrendered to its own shadow. In the center lies a stone dais, empty. No trace of the golden throne remains, yet the air hums with its memory. A subtle warmth, a gentle pressure, like the echo of a heartbeat that has not entirely faded. Perhaps the people did not abandon their city. Perhaps they accompanied it, guiding it softly into that other realm, the realm of the remembered, the realm between worlds where shadow does not mean loss, but transformation. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. Close your eyes for a moment, and you may sense them. A flicker of starlight on stone, a whisper of robes passing through dust, a breath of devotion lingering in the stillness. And now, slowly, we return toward the surface. The paths unwind, the shadows lift, though only slightly, as if reluctant to release their hold. The city recedes behind us, not disappearing, but settling once more into the dusk, merging with the soft veil of its own shade. Above, twilight has given way to night. Stars shimmer faintly, as though aware of the city dreaming below. It is here that the question rises, soft and sorrowful, like a leaf drifting on still water. Can a place still exist if it survives only in memory and moonlight? Or do such places live even more vividly in that delicate space, where silence deepens, where stories breathe, and where shadows cradle what light forgets? In forgotten corners of the earth, some say the city still hums, not waiting to be found, but simply being. A quiet resonance, a gentle echo, a memory that has learned how to dream. And perhaps that is enough. For in the hush of night, as sleep gathers like a soft cloak around your shoulders, the city remains, resting in its shadow, resting in its mystery, resting in the quiet truth that some wonders do not vanish. They simply retreat into the silence that remembers them. The library that breathed with the mountains, it is said that somewhere above the world's restless storms, where the air thins and the sky turns pale with ancient memory, there once stood a library carved into the very ribs of a mountain. Not a building, nor a temple exactly, but something older, an idea sculpted into stone, a sanctuary shaped by hands that trusted silence more than sound. Those who approached it spoke of a presence woven into the cliffs, as if the rock itself had learned to exhale over the centuries. And when morning light touched its thresholds, drifting like soft incense through the mist, it revealed archways that seemed to pulse ever so faintly, breathing in rhythm with the mountain themselves. This is where our chapter begins. A single gate, half buried in cloud, stands open as though waiting for a traveler who never quite arrives. Above it, the peaks glow with the muted gold of a sun not yet risen. Below, the world sleeps, unaware of the knowledge nestled in stone, unaware of the slow heartbeat that echoes through the granite veins. Some believe the wind that curls around this place carries faint chants, fragments of languages forgotten before ink was ever pressed onto parchment. Others say it is merely the mountains speaking to those who pause long enough to listen. Tonight, we walk into that breath. Tonight, we enter the library. Inside the gate, the air shifts, it thickens, warms. There is a sense of stepping not just into a hall, but into a memory. The stone walls, smoothed by centuries of patient wind, gather the faint glow of morning and hold it like a secret. Whispers tell us that these walls once carried shelves lined with scrolls older than most kingdoms. Yet none of them survive intact. Their fragments lie scattered like fallen leaves, thin curls of faded parchment, sighing beneath our steps. They crumble at the slightest breath, but the dust they become is luminous with meaning. It glitters like starlight caught in cobwebs, as if knowledge itself has learned how to decay beautifully. Some wanderers claimed that when they walked here, they could feel patterns beneath their fingertips, etched spiral star maps carved into the walls, so delicately they resembled the veins of a leaf. No one could decipher them fully. And perhaps that was intentional. Perhaps the mountains choose what they reveal. A soft draft moves through the corridor, stirring the dust. It swirls around us like a quiet constellation. Tiny echoes of scrolls that once described distant valleys, now lost beneath shifting rivers. It is here that alleged legends first mention the Golden Throne, not as an object of dominion, but as a point of stillness, an axis around which the world was said to turn with harmony rather than force. Some believe the earliest maps to this throne were kept in this hall, maps drawn not with ink, but with intuition, maps that glowed faintly when held close to the ear, as though listening to them allowed them to shape themselves anew. But all of that has turned to dust now. Dust that listens. Dust that remembers. The mist follows us, coiling through archways like a gentle companion. The chambers widen, their ceilings rising into darkness so high it absorbs the sound of our breath. Here, in this vastness, lie the remains of the celestial hall. It was said that the scholars of this mountain never looked at the night sky directly. They believed the purest constellations were those reflected inward, drawn from memory rather than observation. And so they carved mirrors from polished obsidian, suspending them at angles that caught the faint glow of torches. In those reflections, those shimmering, imperfect glimpses, they claimed to see the sky as it existed before human eyes ever gazed upon it. Fragments of those mirrors remain, shards of deep black glass peeking out from the rubble, their edges softened by time. When touched, some say they hum faintly, as though storing the low resonance of stars long past beyond the horizon of history. Beneath the silence, we sense the scholars who once walked here. Not in form, not as ghosts, but as gentle impressions, a kind of spiritual residue. Their footsteps echo faintly in the way the air folds around us. Their devotion lingers in the stillness, guiding us forward like unseen archivists guarding the last embers of memory. It is said they believed the mountains themselves whispered guidance, that in the creaking of stone and the quiet expansion of rock warmed by morning sun, they heard instructions, subtle, patient, ancient. Perhaps they were right. Perhaps knowledge given too easily loses its sacredness. Farther still, the halls begin to narrow, then widen, then narrow again, like the slow cadence of breathing. The mountain inhales, and the floor rises gently beneath our steps. The mountain exhales, and the way descends again, curving in soft spirals. We follow this rhythm, guided not by sight, but by the quiet thrum beneath our feet. The air grows cooler, carrying the scent of stone wet with age. Occasional droplets fall from unseen heights, each one ringing through the empty chambers like the ticking of an ancient clock. Scholars of old spoke of this passage as the veiled path, the road that led seekers not outward toward the world, but inward toward themselves. They said the golden throne could not be found until a traveler learned to see with more than eyes, to listen with more than ears. Only then would the mountain unveil its final sanctuary. Along the walls, faint carvings emerge. Spirals, crescents, arcs that resemble the flow of rivers. Some rivers no longer exist. Some constellations have shifted, but the essence of their paths remains. Here, the past loosens its grip. Here, time becomes less a line and more a breath. We pause in a chamber shaped like a hollowed heart, lit only by the dull glow of lichen clinging to the stone. In its center stands a pedestal, empty now, but once holding a scroll wrapped in gold-threaded cloth. That scroll, legend says, described the first inward road, the journey of a seeker who sat in silence for 7 days until the mountain opened. No one knows what became of it. Perhaps it was unrolled by someone not ready. Perhaps it dissolved back into dust. Or perhaps it was never meant to be read at all. When we move again, we enter the deepest chamber. It is not grand. It is not illuminated by any hidden lantern or enchanted glow. It is dim, humble, almost empty. Yet it feels like the soft pulse at the center of a sleeping world. The walls curve inward, their surfaces smooth and warm to the touch. The air is still, save for the faintest tremor that seems to come from the stone itself. The mountain breathing, steady and slow. Here, the library's heart once beat brightest. Here, the scrolls were said to whisper without words, their meaning drifting into the minds of those who sat in stillness long enough. These scrolls described landscapes reshaped by time, rivers that changed their courses, valleys swallowed by forests, and skies where constellations drifted like migrating birds. They carried memories older than empire, older than myth, older than even the idea of the golden throne. But they are gone. All that remains is the echo, an emptiness that hums. Some say the knowledge is still here, floating in the warm hush between breaths, waiting for anyone patient enough to sink into silence. Others believe the mountain has taken it back, folding wisdom into its stone so it may never again be misused. Both possibilities feel true. For truth, like breath, is both presence and absence. It arrives and disappears. It illuminates and obscures. As we prepare to leave the sanctuary, we look back once more. The chambers behind us blur into mist. The dust settles softly. The mirrors fade into shadow. The mountain's breath grows faint, like a tide retreating from the shore. And yet, there is warmth still, a quiet ember in the stone, a lingering echo, gentle as a heartbeat just before sleep. Perhaps this library was never meant to be a collection of knowledge. Perhaps it was a reminder that wisdom is not always carved, written, or spoken. Sometimes it is felt, in the pauses between thoughts, in the spaces between footsteps, in the hush that follows a deep exhale. The golden throne, then, may never have been a throne at all, not a seat of power, not a place to be found, but a state of accord, a harmony within, a stillness that mirrors the mountain's patient breath. Outside the gate, the world remains asleep under a quilt of clouds. Dawn has not yet arrived. The peaks, draped in soft silver mist, rise like guardians of forgotten truths. We step back into the cool air, leaving the library behind. And as the wind gathers, brushing past the stone, it carries a final whisper. Some wisdom survives not in words, but in the spaces between them. The lanterns that guarded the night road, it is said, that in the oldest evenings the sky grew heavy with drifting stars. So many that they seemed to press gently against the world below, brushing mountaintops and desert ridges like a tide of luminous grains. Beneath that weight of quiet brilliance, the ancient night road once wound toward a forgotten throne of gold, its path guided not by torches or fires, but by lanterns that glowed without flame. The chapter begins where the desert hushes itself into reverence. Imagine a stretch of pale stone, weathered smooth by millennia of passing feet and passing dreams. Along its edges stand slender pillars, each carved from a single column of translucent rock. Suspended from these pillars hang lanterns, oval, delicate, almost living in their softness. Their light is neither bright nor dim. It is a slow breathing glow, like the warm exhale of a star resting close to earth. They sway gently, though no wind touches them, as if stirred by a memory only they can feel. Some whispered that these lanterns were older than the night road itself, that before the first stones were laid, before the first pilgrim took a trembling step toward the golden throne, the lights were already there, humming softly, waiting to reveal a path for those who long to walk in darkness with trust instead of fear. This is where the invitation begins, in a corridor of hovering luminance, beneath a sky thick with wandering constellations, where every glow seems to hold a secret waiting to be breathed into the quiet. As we drift forward along this shimmering path, the world seems to slow its heartbeat. The stones underfoot appear warm, as though they've absorbed centuries of footsteps. The lanterns cast elongated shapes across the road, soft shadows that stretch and curl, weaving themselves into the soft underbrush that lines the trail. Whispers tell us that travelers of old believed the lanterns were more than carved vessels. They spoke of them as companions, living guides, silent watchers who listened with patience to the unspoken burdens carried along this sacred route. Their glow would shift gently depending on the traveler's state, brightening when courage faltered, dimming when danger pressed near, flickering with a quiet joy when hope found its voice again. Some believed these lights were crafted from captured starlight, raindrops of the cosmos gathered in crystalline bowls. Others said the lanterns held the last breaths of ancient guardian spirits who had vowed never to abandon the night-bound wanderer. But the oldest legends of all, murmured only in shrines and wind-worn huts, claimed that the lanterns simply knew the ache of the world, the longing of the lost, and the dreams carried like fragile vessels through the night. Here, Along this narrow and forgotten ribbon of stone, the lanterns glow with an awareness both tender and inscrutable. The path continues. On either side, tall trees lean inward, their branches draped in silver-touched moss. Shadows move between the trunks, not threatening, but graceful, like memories drifting through the corridors of the mind. Every so often, a faint echo rises, resembling a fragment of a forgotten hymn. It is never clear if the sound comes from the forest, from the lanterns, or from the silence listening to itself. Perhaps it does not matter. What matters is the stillness settling around us. A stillness that does not erase the world, but deepens it, as though each footstep awakens something that had grown accustomed to centuries of quiet. As we continue our slow passage, the night road feels less like a path and more like a boundary, a seam stitched between what is known and what quietly waits beyond knowing. The lanterns brighten, then dim, their soft rhythms echoing the breath of the unseen. Some say the road was once used only by pilgrims seeking the golden throne, a place said to shimmer like dawn in the moments before sunrise. Others believed it was a passage for souls who had forgotten their way home, drawn onward by the lantern's promise of safe crossing. Still others whispered that the night road existed in more than one world, that its stones had tasted the footsteps of both the living and the dreaming. Where memory fades, the lanterns remain. We move past a curve where the trees part, revealing a glimpse of distant mountains. Their outlines are bathed in a faint blue-silver glow, the kind only the deepest hours of night can weave. The lanterns throw their warm halos onto the ground, creating islands of light in a sea of shadow, each one a sanctuary inviting us to pause, to breathe, to listen. There is a comfort here, a sense of gentle companionship, as though the lanterns themselves are aware of our presence. They sway a little more when we approach, casting patterns like woven gold across the stones. It feels, for a moment, as though they are greeting us, remembering us, even though we have just arrived. Perhaps light remembers even when memory does not. Some corners of the forest glow faintly, touched by reflections. The air carries a faint sweetness, reminiscent of dust warmed by the sun. Though here there is no sun, only a sky heavy with drifting stars. It is here that we begin to understand what the ancients meant when they called this place a boundary between worlds. Not a door, not a gate, but a threshold. A place where the ordinary loosens its hold and the extraordinary unfolds like a quiet bloom. As we drift deeper into the chapter, it becomes easy to imagine the pilgrims who once trusted this glowing path. Some walked with heads bowed, carrying questions that had grown too heavy for daylight. Others carried offerings, small stones etched with prayers, fragments of cloth marked with moon symbols, jars filled with the dust of sacred riverbeds, and a few, perhaps, walked simply because the road called them, because something in the lantern's warm shimmer whispered, "Come, and you will be guided." It is said that those who journeyed along this road rarely felt alone. Even in solitude, they sensed presences walking at their sides, shapes made of light and memory, gentle and patient. And when fear appeared, as it always does along any journey worth taking, the lanterns would brighten, casting courage like soft fire into the hearts of those who continued forward. With every step, the world behind them dissolved a little more, and the shimmering promise ahead grew just a little nearer. Some believed the golden throne was not a throne at all, but a metaphor, an awakening, a moment of clarity, a dawn rising inside the self. Others believed it was real, a seat sculpted from celestial metal, forged in a time when God still walked barefoot across the hills. But none who returned ever described it clearly. Perhaps they were unable to. Perhaps some experiences are meant to remain half-formed, like a dream that vanishes upon waking but leaves warmth in its absence. The lanterns ahead dim slightly, their glow deepening into a soft amber, as though acknowledging our presence and our passage. The shadows stretch longer, softer, like curtains being drawn around a sacred hall. The night road begins to blur at its edges. The stones seem to melt into the darkness. The forest hushes itself further, holding its breath in a moment of reverence. The lanterns sway more slowly now, moving as though tired from remembering so much. Their glow pools onto the ground in the warm golden circles that ripple gently with each flicker. There is a sense, faint but unmistakable, that we are reaching the end, not of the road itself, but of what the night wishes to reveal tonight. There are paths that show themselves only when the heart is quiet enough to listen, and there are paths that must fade, softly, so they can be found again in the next dream. Perhaps this road is both. We pause. The lanterns ahead dim further, becoming gentle halos suspended in the thickening dark. Even their shapes begin to soften, as though returning to the stars from which some believe they were born. Behind us, the way we have come seems to dissolve into a tapestry of shadows and distant drifting light. The night folds its long, patient arms around the scene, inviting it into silence. The forest exhales. The lanterns flicker, once, twice, like a farewell spoken without sound. And now, the final reflection settles gently around us, like dust illuminated by moonlight. The lanterns that guarded the night road dim to their softest glow, no longer guiding, merely watching. Their light no longer urges us forward, nor draws us back. It simply exists, steady as breath, ancient as the first dream ever whispered into darkness. The night road itself fades, not vanishing, but slipping into the folds of memory, into the quiet place where stories rest until they are needed again. Perhaps it was never meant to be followed to its end. Perhaps it exists only to remind us that even in the deepest hours, something glows with patient guidance. Light remembers even when the road forgets. And as this chapter closes, the lanterns hang quietly in the darkness, swaying ever so slightly in a wind we cannot feel. Waiting, as they always have, and as they always will. The kingdom that whispered through broken stone. It is said that in a valley shaped like an open hand, where the earth once lifted kingdoms and later cradled only silence, there lies a scatter of ruins, so gentle in their decay that they appear to be sleeping. Moss softens every edge. Light drifts through them like a careful breath. And the stones, those ancient, steadfast witnesses, seem to lean toward one another, as though sharing a quiet secret that the wind alone remembers. Here, in this valley of scattered remnants, we begin. At the first hush of dusk, when the horizon folds itself into tones of muted gold, the broken columns rise like old bones from the ground. Some tilt, as though bowing under the weight of forgotten centuries. Others reach upright into the cooling sky as if hoping the stars might still recognize their shape. Courtyards, once mapped with geometric precision, have softened under layers of moss, their rigid designs blurred into gentle spirals. And everywhere, Fragments of sculptures lie arranged not by human hands, but by time itself. Faces looking skyward with hollow grace, limbs incomplete yet restful, each one holding a story in its fractured silence. This was once the kingdom bound to the golden throne, a realm whose roads fanned outward like rays of sunlight. Roads that carried pilgrims, artisans, dreamers, mathematicians, and those who simply wished to sit in the kindness of its light. Now those roads sleep beneath the soil, hidden under roots and drifting seeds. But if you walk slowly enough, you may sense the faint memory of their warmth beneath your feet. Some believe the valley hums with a quiet resonance. Others say the stones themselves hold breath. And those who have slept here overnight, wrapped in darkness and ancient air, speak of hearing whispers in languages they cannot name yet somehow understand. Not words, not exactly. More like gentle instructions for the soul. Beneath the silence, we step forward. The ruins open their arms to us with the patience of something that no longer hurries. Every stone is worn smooth by centuries of wind. Every carving softened into near erasures. Where once sharp lines told stories of creation and worship, celestial mathematics, now only faint grooves remain, like memories too fragile for speech. Still, if you tilt your head just so, if you let your breathing fall into the rhythm of the valley, you may feel the pull of these old symbols. Spirals that once mapped the cycles of moons. Triangles marking the direction of sacred winds. A sunburst motif so faint that only at certain angles does it reveal the echo of its design. Whispers tell us that artisans carved these walls with rituals instead of tools. That before each stroke, they breathed onto the stone, asking it to remember what compassion felt like. That the kingdom's priests spent evenings tracing constellations on the temple floors, believing that the sky's wisdom would seep downward into the cold stone and live there for generations. Some of these tales may be only legends, held lovingly by those who refuse to let silence be the final keeper of truth. But as we walk deeper into the ruins, as torchlight, or perhaps our imagination, brushes softly across the cracked surfaces, it becomes difficult to dismiss the sensation that these stones have known tenderness, that they were shaped not out of conquest, but out of longing. Where memory fades, something else begins. A story rises from the dust, carried with the care of a fragile relic. It tells of a queen who governed not by decree, but by the dreams she collected. Night after night, she would sit in a chamber lined with star-marked stones, listening to the dreams of her people, dreams whispered by farmers, by scholars, by wandering children who came with pockets full of river pebbles. Some said she could hear fear before it fully formed. Others said she could hear hope even in the quietest voice. Her rule was gentle, slow, like a candle allowed to burn rather than blaze. And though her name has faded from every surviving inscription, her presence lingers in the stillness here, in the way the air seems to pause as we pass, in the way no bird dares harshen the evening with a loud cry. There are ruins where the queen once walked. A sequence of stone steps leads to an open platform, half in shadow, half sun-kissed, even at dusk. The platform is bare now, but some believe this was where the council gathered to commune with stars. They say the floor once glowed faintly at night, reacting to constellations only visible during certain seasons. Scholars have dismissed this as myth, yet the stones feel strangely cool beneath our touch, as though still attuned to celestial rhythms. And perhaps myths are only truths softened by distance. Deeper within the ruins lies what was once the palace, though the word palace feels too heavy, too structured, for a place built of such quiet intention. Its walls have fallen inward, creating pockets of shadow where vines curl through old doorways. The ceiling has long collapsed, allowing the sky to pour itself into empty rooms. Light drifts through the openings in pale, weightless sheets, as though hesitant to disturb the dust. As we walk through what remains of its central hall, a faint warmth pulses beneath our steps. Some say the golden throne stood here upon a dais that no longer remains. Not a throne of dominance, but of illumination. A seat carved of sandstone and lined with metal, so softened by the time that no one agrees whether it was gold, bronze, or some alloy now lost to artisanship. It is said that when one sat upon that throne, conflicts softened in the chest, like knots loosening under warm hands. It is said that the throne never demanded obeisance, only presence. Others insist the throne was taken elsewhere, carried along one of the sunbeam roads that once radiated outward. Some imagine it was hidden in a mountain shrine. Some say it was carried west, into the ocean, where it remains beneath shifting tides. And some whisper that the throne simply dissolved the moment the kingdom dissolved, its light dispersing into the stones we walk among now, waiting for those willing to listen. Beneath the crumbled archways, wind moves with a soft intelligence, curling around each pillar and broken stair. Dust dances lightly in its wake, rising, settling, rising again. Little motions that feel almost like gestures of welcome. Or perhaps farewell. We pause at a wall carved with the faint outline of what may once have been a map. Not a map of territory, but of connection. Lines spiraling outward, intersecting softly, suggestive of pathways meant for more than travel. These lines, though nearly erased, give the impression of something organic, like the branching of roots or the tender threads of a spider's web. They hint at a kingdom that understood interdependence, that believed light could be carried through the world not by force, but by resonance. And then, as the last edge of daylight drifts across the broken stone floor, the valley seems to exhale a soft collective breath, escaping walls, columns, fragments alike. Shadows settle into their evening shapes. The moss glows faintly in the cool light, as though storing the sun's memory. The stones, silent now, appear at peace with their incompleteness. There is no revelation waiting here, no grand conclusion, only the lingering truth that all kingdoms, no matter how luminous their past, eventually surrender to silence. Yet silence is not absence. It is a kind of listening, a spaciousness, where old voices can rise like incense if we give them time. Standing in the dim glow, surrounded by ruins that no longer ask to be understood, we sense the faint heartbeat of the past, soft as a distant drum, steady as the slow pulse of the earth itself. It is a reminder that even in their brokenness, these stones still whisper. They whisper of devotion, of compassion carved into architecture, of a people who believe deeply in the gentle power of presence. Perhaps the golden throne was never meant to be found. Perhaps its light lives now in places that need it, hidden in mountain fog, reflected in tidal pools, carried quietly along forgotten routes. Or perhaps the throne was always within the stones and remains there still, scattered in countless fragments across the valley floor, waiting for footsteps slow enough, hearts quiet enough, to feel its warmth. Night folds itself over the ruins. The moon lifts gently, marking the valley with soft silver. And as we prepare to leave, the stones seem to settle deeper into the earth, as though returning to an ancient sleep. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. And in this place, under moonlight and moss, the echoes linger, soft, unending, and full of the kingdom that once whispered through broken stone. The map drawn in ashes and rain, it begins with a whisper of dust, drifting through the hollow ribs of a sanctuary long surrendered to time. Stones, once carved with prayers, once warmed by 1,000 kneeling pilgrims, now hold only the memory of footsteps. And in the stillness beneath their cracked foundations, something fragile waits, as though the earth itself has been holding its breath for centuries. It is here in the dim cradle of a forgotten floor that a map is found, not drawn on parchment, not carved into clay, but traced in the faintest lines of ash, softened and darkened by the early rain that once seeped through the broken ceiling above. It is said the ashes came from sacred fires, flames tended by people whose names have long dissolved into silence. Whispers tell us the rainwater that fell upon them was not merely water, but the sky's own blessing, captured in a moment when clouds drifted low, heavy with half-remembered sorrow. Mixed together, ash and rain form delicate paths that shimmer only when touched by moonlight, as though drawn for eyes that do not remain fully awake. For a long moment, the map lies untouched, resting like the fragile memory of a dream still warm from the night. And the wind, curling through the sanctuary's broken arches, seems to bend its breath in reverence, careful not to disturb the lines that might scatter with a sigh. Some believe this sanctuary was once known as the House of Returning Echoes, a place where travelers paused before stepping into the unknown. Others say it was built on a fault of the earth where ancient voices rose like incense through cracks in the stone. But whatever name it once held, it has been many lifetimes since anyone lit a torch here, or bowed a head, or whispered a plea to the gods. Now only the map speaks, and even it speaks softly. When the moon drifts overhead, its pale glow slipping through the broken roof, the map awakens. Not with movement, its lines remain still, but with a faint radiance, the way a quiet thought brightens the mind just before sleep claims it. Thin threads of silver curve across the dusty floor. Some spiral outward like ancient constellations. Others flow downward like rivers seeking a distant, unseen sea. At the map's heart lies a symbol shaped like a throne, though softened by time, until it resembles more a gentle mound of light than a seat of kings. Legend calls it the Golden Throne, not a chair, not a coronation seat, but a place where the soul could kneel before its own truth. It is said the map charts the final hidden road to that sacred place. But if that is true, then the destination is not of earth or stone. It is something quieter, something that asks for humility rather than conquest. Travelers who sought it long ago carried no swords. They carried offerings, sprigs of dawn-colored flowers, shards of river-worn quartz, breath held in silent prayer. The map offers no distances, no compass, no measure of time. Only direction, only suggestion, only the soft glimmer of possibility. Scholars who once dared to interpret the map disagreed on nearly every detail. One monk, known only as the Keeper of Quiet Hours, believed the winding lines revealed a valley shaped like a serpent. coiled beneath the earth, guarding something sacred. He wrote that the serpent was not a creature of flesh, but of landscape itself. Hills rising like scales, rivers curving like ribs, shadows pooling where its eyes might rest. Another wanderer, whose name was lost, but whose sandals were said to have never touched the same road twice, insisted the map marked a path that appears only in dreams. He claimed that those who followed it found themselves walking through places they had never seen yet somehow remembered, ruins glowing beneath starlight, temples half swallowed by vines, stairways leading to clouds rather than to heavens. And then there were the quietest voices, the ones rarely written down. They murmured that the map was never meant to guide the living anywhere at all. Instead, it was a meditation, an invitation to look inward, to trace the soft valleys and ridges of the soul as though they were landscapes mapped by something ancient and kind. If you listen closely, they said, you may hear the map breathing with you. Inhale, and the silver lines brighten. Exhale, and they soften, curling back into dusk. As the moon shifts across the sky, its glow falling in new angles, the ashen rain pathways seem to ripple, not with movement, but with memory. And suddenly, the sanctuary feels crowded, not with people, but with echoes, shadows of civilizations that have long returned to the soil. You may see, in the drifting dust, the silhouette of a temple swallowed by forest. Roots spiral down its walls like sleeping serpents, while faint carvings of celestial wheels glow beneath moss. Somewhere else, a statue lies half buried in a riverbed, its face eroded into a peaceful blur. Once, its eyes may have looked across kingdoms. Now, only fish weave through the hollow space where its crown once rested. Farther still, an altar appears, a slab of ancient stone warmed by sunlight from a forgotten morning. Sacrifices made here long ago were not of blood or gold, but of breath. The people would kneel before the altar, close their eyes, and release a single long exhale, offering their doubts to the wind. Such places rise like fog in the sanctuary, soft, ephemeral, as if the map is remembering the world that once trusted its guidance. And perhaps it is true. Perhaps each line of ash corresponds not to a road, but to a memory, not to a destination, but to a lesson, not to a throne, but to the humility of seeking. As the night deepens, the map begins to feel less like an artifact and more like a companion, quietly sitting beside you, inviting you to lean closer. If you trace your finger gently along one of its lines, the ash does not scatter. Instead, it clings to the movement, recognizing the soft presence of a seeker. Where you touch, the pathway glimmers faintly, as though acknowledging that curiosity itself is a kind of offering, and somewhere within you, a deeper calm settles. It is said that those who truly see the map do not seek the golden throne to claim it. They seek it to understand why it shines at all. They walk slowly, with bare feet and unguarded hearts, knowing the throne may never be reached, or may not be a throne at all. Some claim that at the journey's end, travelers found only a clearing filled with mist, soft, luminous, shifting with moonlit breath. But standing within it, they felt something open within their chest, as though a door long closed had finally eased ajar. Others say the road simply dissolved one day, the paths fading back into forest or sand, leaving only a faint echo in the traveler's memory. But the kindest tales say no one ever truly lost the road. They simply learn to carry it within themselves. Eventually, dawn begins to brighten the sanctuary's stones. The first pale line of morning stretches across the floor like a hesitant blessing. With it comes the tender warmth that precedes sunrise, the warmth that wakes birds, that stirs petals, that signals the night's gentle farewell. And the map responds. Its silver glimmer dims, its lines soften. One by one, the pathways blur into the dust, as though returning to the soil from which they were born. Not abruptly, not mournfully, but with a grace so delicate it feels like watching a breath fade into cold air. It is said that the map withdraws at sunrise so the day may not misunderstand it. So the practical mind, with its measures and its logic, will not try to conquer what was made for silence and moonlight. When at last the map has faded entirely, only a faint outline remains, as though someone once knelt here and dreamed deeply. And perhaps that is all the map ever was, a dream etched into the world by those who believed humility was the greatest journey of all. The sanctuary grows still again. The dust settles, the air softens, and yet something lingers. Not an instruction, not a destination, only an invitation. To seek gently, to walk slowly, to accept that some roads are not meant to be followed to their end, but simply to be honored. Where memory fades, the night leaves a final whisper. Perhaps the map was never meant to be found. Perhaps it appears only to those who have already begun the journey within. And as sleep steps near, quiet, lunar, tender, the last echo drifts through your thoughts like a feather carried on the earliest breath of dawn. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. The echoes left by the last coronation. It is said that in the far reaches of a forgotten forest, where the roots of ancient trees twist like sleeping serpents, there stands a hall that no map dares to remember. Some call it the chamber of the last crown. Others whisper that it is merely a mirror woven from moonlight and memory. But beneath the hush of the night, when the air is still, and the earth listens, a soft reverberation rises from its stones. The faint trembling echo of a coronation long surrendered to time. Imagine approaching its threshold. Before you lies an archway of crumbled sandstone, veiled in pale moss and silver dust. The gate was once carved with sigils, spirals marking celestial seasons, star-etched symbols of vows that bound rulers to realms. Now they lie weathered, barely recognizable, as though the sky itself has forgotten the shapes. A breeze brushes past you, carrying with it the scent of old incense, dried petals, and the slightest hint of smoke, as if a ceremonial torch, extinguished ages ago, still smolders in the unseen. The roads that once wound toward this sacred place are gone now. They sleep beneath layers of fallen leaves and centuries of wandering soil. Nothing points the way. Yet somehow you feel guided, drawn by a hum beneath the silence. A vibration so gentle it seems more like the memory of a sound than sound itself. And so you enter, slow, breath held, heart softened. Moonlight spills through the broken roof like liquid silver, illuminating corridors lined with banners that no longer lift, but hang in heavy faded colors. Twilight blues, dusk reds, quiet gold. They whisper against themselves, as though remembering the ceremony they witnessed on the final night when a kingdom's fate turned upon a breath. Whispers tell us that the last coronation was unlike the ones that came before it. Not grand, not thunderous with celebration. Instead, it unfolded gently, like a prayer carried between cupped hands. Some say the elders arrived wearing robes the color of dawn smoke, their steps soft, their faces lined with the weight of prophecies. Others believe they were mere silhouettes, half hidden by torchlight, moving with the solemn grace of those who have seen the first and last cycles of a world. And at the center of the hall, on a platform shaped like a rising sun, stood the golden throne. Once, its radiance was said to fill the chamber with warmth so vivid that even the shadows bowed. But on that night, the throne glowed only faintly, as if tired, as if aware that its time among mortals was drawing thin. The ruler who approached it, whether king or queen, legend does not agree, wore garments woven from twilight hues, soft violet, muted gold, and the grey of distant horizons. There were no trumpets, no roaring crowds, only the deep inhale of the elders, and the exhale of the hall itself. Beneath the silence, the ruler bowed their head. A crown, delicate as a crescent moon, was lifted, not in triumph, but in trembling reverence. It hovered above the ruler's brow, shimmering like starlight caught between two breaths, and the vow began. Some fragments of that vow survive in crumbling scrolls found in mountain monasteries. Some survive only in the dreams of those born beneath certain constellations. But all agree the vow was spoken in a voice gentle enough to calm storms and strong enough to carry through centuries. A promise of guardianship, of knowing when to lead and when to let go. When the crown touched the ruler's forehead, a hush fell, not merely upon the hall, but upon the kingdom itself. It is said the wind paused, the rivers softened, even the stars leaned closer, as though taking witness. And then, something changed. Some believe the throne's golden radiance began to fade the moment the coronation ended. Others insist the fading had begun long before, and the ceremony simply marked its last glimmer. Yes, there are those who speak of a different truth, that the throne did not dim at all, but rather began to withdraw its light from the physical world, gathering itself into realms unseen. In forgotten corners of old manuscripts, there is a peculiar phrase: when earthly crowns turn to moonlit echoes, a kingdom learns to dream. Scholars have debated its meaning for generations. Mystics say the coronation was never meant to secure power, but to release it. To shift a kingdom from rule to remembrance, from dominion to awakening. But what truly occurred that night remains wrapped in quiet secrecy, held by stones that do not speak, and by echoes that refuse to fade completely. As you walk deeper into the ghostly hall, your fingers trailing along cracked pillars, you may notice something subtle. The air thickens, not with dust, but with presence, a reverent heaviness, the sense that you are not merely observing history, but brushing against a moment that still breathes. A faint shimmer rests upon the dais where the throne once stood. The throne itself is gone now, vanished, as though carried away by hands made of light. Some believe it dissolved at the exact instant the kingdom began its long exodus into myth. Others think it was taken by celestial guardians who recognized that earthly hearts were no longer worthy of its radiance. Perhaps it was never meant to be found again. As you stand before the empty dais, a soft ache gathers in the chest, like remembering a song whose melody you almost recall. You imagine the last ruler standing where you now stand, their crown gleaming faintly, their breath slow and steady, as they made peace with the fading of an era. You imagine the elders stepping back, their faces shimmering with tears that glowed like embers. Not tears of sorrow, but of sacred acceptance. The kingdom was changing, transforming. No coronation henceforth would carry power of this kind. And then the echo began. Not loud, not triumphant, just a gentle hum, spiraling into the beams of moonlight, weaving through the rafters, settling into the stones. A note so soft that only those who listened with their souls could perceive it. That hum is what you hear now. It vibrates in the floor beneath your feet. It tingles against the air on your skin. It thrums like the heartbeat of something ancient and dreaming. Some say the echo is the memory of the throne's last radiance. Others believe it is the vow itself, repeating endlessly, a promise too sacred to sink into silence. And there are those who claim the echo is a doorway, a threshold between worlds, calling only to those who walk gently enough to hear it. Where memory fades, the hall remains. Crumbled, yes. Forgotten by maps, yes. But held alive by the soft, persistent echo of the last coronation. A sound that needs no ears, only the willingness to feel. You step back from the dais. A breeze sweeps through the corridors, stirring the old banners. Moonlight dims as clouds drift overhead, and the echo softens, not disappearing, not ending, simply folding itself into the hush of night, waiting for another wanderer to listen. Some voices only echo when we are ready to hear them. And as you leave the hall behind, moving through archways bathed in silver shadow, past pillars washed in dusk blue light, you sense a presence lingering at your back. Not watching, not warning, just accompanying. The echo remains with you all the way to the forest edge, fading gradually into the rustle of leaves and the distant call of unseen birds. It settles somewhere deep within you, delicate and warm, like the final note of a beloved song. One sung by a civilization whose breath has long passed into myth. The coronation is gone. The throne has vanished. The kingdom sleeps. But the echo endures. And in its soft vibration, you hear a reminder. Every ending is a doorway. Every silence carries a story. And some mysteries are not meant to be solved, only felt. The throne that waits in the breath of night. It is said that there are places the stars remember, even when we do not. Places where the ground holds footprints long after the travelers have drifted into legend. Where roads sleep beneath centuries of drifting sand, and forgotten cities rest like old songs beneath the hush of soil and time. And somewhere amid that vast and sacred silence, where memory fades and the voice of night grows clear, there is whispered to be a waiting throne, veiled in shadow, cradled in starlight. Tonight, that is where our story breathes. Imagine, if you will, a still landscape beneath a sky heavy with constellations. Each star not a distant flame, but a patient watcher hovering like a lantern suspended above eternity. No wind moves. No creature stirs. The entire horizon lies quiet, as if the world itself is holding its breath. Only the night is alive. A soft glow, like embers hidden beneath dark cloth, flickers faintly in the distance. Not bright enough to illuminate, but just enough to guide those who are willing to walk without knowing why. Beneath the silence, the buried roads begin to murmur. Some say it is the shifting of stone. Others claim it is the echo of ancient pilgrims who once walked these sacred paths with offerings held against their hearts. But there are those, the dreamers, the quiet ones, who listen to the spaces between sound, who believe it is the breath of night itself, welcoming wanderers back to the place all journeys end. Not in conquest, not in acclaim, but in stillness. For the golden throne does not gleam like a prize at the summit of ambition. No, it waits in the hush of unmeasured time, beyond aspiration, beyond desire. Not as an object of rule, but as a symbol of harmony. A throne not to be sat upon, but to be understood. A throne not carved from power, but from presence. And so we walk, not across deserts, nor through forests, nor over mountains, but inward, where the unseen paths unfurl through chambers of memory and the corridors of breath. A faint sensation, as though the earth beneath your feet has begun to rise, lifting itself from centuries of sleep. The buried roads emerge, not all at once, but like thoughts returning after long forgetting. A stone here, a fragment there, worn smooth by hands that turned to dust long before your story began. Some believe the roads awaken only when the stars align in silent ceremony, when the heavens exhale and the boundaries between now and then soften like sand beneath water. Others speak of an unseen realm, where time folds like fabric, and the breath of night guides those who listen toward the heart of the hidden. It is a realm not drawn on maps, for no paper made by human hands could hold the shape of longing. And longing, gentle, ancient, persistent, is the compass. Each step forward feels as though you float rather than walk, carried by something soft and patient. Like the tide returning to the shore, it has known forever. There are no torches here, no lanterns, no hurried footsteps, only that subtle luminous quiet, the kind that gathers on winter windows and deep ocean floors, and in the spaces where whispers go when they are too tender to be spoken aloud. Somewhere in that silence, stories stir. They rise not like thunder, but like the first note of a lullaby, soft enough to nearly be your imagination, real enough to make your breath slow. You sense pilgrims walking beside you, not visible, not defined, but present in the subtle shift of the air, like memories borrowed from a time you never lived, yet somehow have always known. Their footsteps are dust, their offerings are echoes, but their longing, their hope, their quiet ache for something beyond naming, that remains. The roads converge. Dozens of paths, woven from centuries of searching, draw themselves toward a single unseen center. A place not marked by walls, nor guarded by gates, yet felt like the pulse beneath a wrist. Somewhere just beyond the veil, they say, the golden throne waits. Not radiant, not towering, but quietly luminous, like the line between dream and waking. A throne that glows only faintly, as though shaped from the echo of candlelight rather than flame itself. Whispers tell us that the throne recognizes seekers not by face, nor by name, but by openness. A quality softer than hope, gentler than faith. A willingness to arrive without the need to own, to ask, to conquer. The breath of night brushes your cheek, warm all as memory, cool as surrender. And there, in that moment, you understand. Some destinations were never meant to be reached with eyes wide open. As the unseen throne grows nearer, something shifts. Not in the world around you, but within you. The air thickens with reflection, as though every thought that ever wandered through you now stands silently at your side. You are not alone here. Not truly. Not ever. The weight you carry, the stories you have lived, the names you have spoken, the farewells you hold like folded letters, all settle gently upon the earth, as if the ground itself has opened its hands to receive what you no longer need to bear. The throne remains unseen, yet profoundly present, felt the way grief is felt, or love, or the soft turning of seasons. Its golden light does not blaze. It barely touches the edges of perception. A faint shimmer at the corner of awareness, like dawn reconsidering the horizon before deciding to arrive. And you realize, perhaps for the first time, that the throne is not hidden by shadows, nor distance, nor mystery. It is hidden by expectation. The night exhales, slow, warm, ancient. And you do too. For some thrones are not meant to be conquered, or inherited, or even seen. They are meant to be felt, softly, quietly, in the space that opens when the world grows heavy and the heart grows still. The breath of night surrounds you. A gentle tide without water, a lullaby without sound. Here, in this hush beyond conclusion, you find not an ending, but a return to calm, a return to wonder, a return to that quiet place within the lining of your thoughts, where stories rest before they are spoken. And perhaps, if you listen closely, you will hear it. Not a command, nor an answer, but a recognition, a soft glow, too delicate for sight, acknowledging your presence the way moonlight acknowledges water. Without touch, yet entirely. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. Some roads only rise when we are willing to walk without needing to arrive. And some thrones, golden, ancient, waiting, are found not by looking but by breathing. So let the world fall quiet. Let the stars keep their long and patient watch. Let the crown of night lower itself softly across your thoughts. For the throne remains hidden, yet profoundly here. Not as a monument of glory, but as a sanctuary of stillness. A reminder etched in silence and wrapped in starlight. Some thrones are not meant to be found by sight, but by listening to the night's deepest breath.